Fred and Edwina Rogers were a seemingly ordinary couple living in the quiet Houston neighborhood of Garden Oaks. Their home was a modest, well-kept house, nestled among tree-lined streets and friendly neighbors. The Rogers were known for their unassuming nature and the sense of stability they brought to their community. Fred, a respected geophysicist, had spent years building a successful career in the oil industry. His work was not just a job, but a passion, contributing to the booming energy sector that was the lifeblood of Houston's economy. Colleagues admired his dedication and expertise, often seeking his advice on complex geological matters. Edwina, a dedicated homemaker, was known for her warm hospitality and involvement in the local community. She was the heart of their home, always ready with a smile and a kind word. Edwina participated in various community events, from church gatherings to neighborhood potlucks, where her culinary skills were highly praised. Together, they were regarded as upstanding citizens, well respected by their neighbors and active members of their church. Their presence was a comforting constant in the ever-changing landscape of Houston, embodying the values of hard work, faith, and community spirit. Their story, however, would take a dark turn, forever etching their names into the annals of Houston crime history as victims in a case that remains unsolved to this day: the Icebox murders. The gruesome discovery of their dismembered bodies in their own home shocked the nation and left an indelible mark on the city's collective memory. The Rogers were proud parents to their only son, Charles, a bright young man who had recently graduated from university. Charles had always been the apple of their eye, and his academic achievements were a source of immense pride for Fred and Edwina. He possessed a keen intellect, showing promise in his chosen field of engineering. His professors spoke highly of his analytical skills and innovative thinking, predicting a bright future for him in the burgeoning field of aerospace engineering. Friends and family described Charles as quiet and introverted, yet respectful and polite. He was a man of few words, preferring the company of books and scientific journals over social gatherings. Despite his reserved nature, those who knew him well appreciated his gentle demeanor and sharp mind. Little did they know that this seemingly typical family harbored secrets that would soon come to light in the most gruesome of ways. The facade of normalcy hid a complex web of tensions and unresolved issues that would ultimately lead to a tragic and horrifying conclusion. The Rogers were living the American dream, a testament to hard work, dedication, and family values. Their life was a picture of success and contentment, a beacon of what many aspired to achieve in the post-war era of prosperity. However, beneath the surface of their idyllic life, a storm was brewing, one that would shatter the tranquility of their home and leave a community forever scarred by the mystery of their unsolved murders. The events that unfolded would reveal the fragility of the veneer of perfection that often masks deeper, darker truths. The year was 1965 and the city of Houston was on the verge of a population boom. The city was expanding rapidly, with new industries and opportunities attracting people from all over the country. It was a time of optimism and growth, with the future looking brighter than ever. Amidst the excitement of progress and opportunity, a chilling crime would grip the city, exposing the dark underbelly that lurked beneath its burgeoning prosperity. The brutal murders of Fred and Edwina Rogers would become a symbol of the hidden dangers that can exist even in the most promising of times. The Rogers story serves as a stark reminder that even in the most ordinary of lives, darkness can lurk, and sometimes the most unsettling mysteries hit closest to home. Their tragic end continues to haunt the collective memory of Houston, a chilling testament to the fact that appearances can be deceiving, and that the most shocking truths often lie just beneath the surface. On June 23, 1965, a concerned neighbor contacted the Houston Police Department to report a strange and unsettling silence emanating from the Rogers residence. The Rogers, Fred and Edwina, were known to be a friendly and sociable couple, always seen chatting with neighbors or tending to their garden. Their sudden disappearance was alarming. The family had not been seen or heard from in days, which was highly unusual for the sociable couple. Neighbors had grown increasingly worried, noting that the usually well-kept lawn was now overgrown, and newspapers had piled up on the porch. Responding officers arrived at the tidy brick home, their initial concern quickly escalating to horror as they stepped inside. The front door creaked open, revealing a house that seemed frozen in time, yet something was undeniably wrong. The house was eerily quiet, the air thick with the stench of decay. Dust particles floated in the dim light, and the silence was almost deafening. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for the officers to uncover its dark secret. Moving methodically through the house, officers discovered a scene that would forever be etched into Houston crime lore. Each room they entered seemed more unsettling than the last, with signs of a struggle and disarray. In the kitchen, the officers found the family's refrigerator, a General Electric model commonly referred to as an icebox at the time. The appliance stood out in the otherwise chaotic kitchen, its hum the only sound breaking the silence. The appliance hummed, seemingly operational, but something about it seemed amiss. The officers exchanged uneasy glances, their instincts telling them that the refrigerator held the key to the mystery. When the officers opened the refrigerator door, they were met with a sight that made their blood run cold. The interior was meticulously organized, but the contents were far from ordinary. Inside the refrigerator, neatly arranged on the shelves, were the dismembered bodies of Fred and Edwina Rogers. The officers recoiled in horror, struggling to comprehend the gruesome scene before them. Their remains had been carefully dismembered, wrapped in butcher paper and placed in individual containers. The precision and care taken in the dismemberment suggested a chilling level of premeditation. The level of meticulousness involved in the crime was chilling, suggesting a disturbing level of premeditation and control. It was clear that the perpetrator had taken their time ensuring that every detail was meticulously planned and executed. The officers were immediately struck by the chilling contrast between the meticulous organization of the crime scene and the brutality of the act itself. The juxtaposition of order and savagery was deeply unsettling. This initial shock quickly gave way to a flurry of activity as the house became a crime scene. The once quiet neighborhood was now buzzing with the sounds of police radios and the murmur of investigators. Detectives, forensic experts, and medical examiners swarmed the residence, determined to uncover the truth behind this heinous crime. Every inch of the house was scrutinized for clues, and the search extended to the surrounding property. The Icebox murders, as they would come to be known, sent shockwaves through the city of Houston, leaving residents grappling with fear and disbelief. The gruesome details of the crime dominated headlines, and the community was left in a state of shock. Who could have committed such a horrific act, and what could have been their motive? The questions loomed large, and the search for answers became a top priority for the Houston Police Department. The search for answers was about to begin. Detectives pored over every piece of evidence, interviewed neighbors and acquaintances, and followed every lead, no matter how small. The investigation would prove to be one of the most challenging and perplexing cases in Houston's history. As investigators delved deeper into the lives of Fred and Edwina Rogers, their attention quickly turned to their son, Charles, who had vanished without a trace. The case was already shrouded in mystery, but Charles's sudden disappearance added an even more perplexing layer to the investigation. Charles, a recent graduate with a degree in engineering, had been living with his parents at the time of their murders. He was known to be a highly intelligent individual, having excelled in his studies and shown great promise in his field. His academic achievements were a source of pride for his family, making his sudden disappearance all the more shocking. His sudden disappearance, coupled with the lack of any forced entry at the residence, made him an immediate person of interest. The fact that there were no signs of a break-in suggested that the perpetrator was someone familiar to the victims, someone who had easy access to the house. This led investigators to focus their efforts on Charles, who had been living with his parents and had the means and opportunity to commit the crime. Authorities launched a nationwide manhunt for Charles, hoping to bring him in for questioning. The search for Charles became one of the most extensive manhunts in the country's history, with law enforcement agencies across the nation working together to track him down. Despite their best efforts, Charles remained elusive, evading capture and leaving investigators frustrated and baffled. His background was scrutinized, his friends and acquaintances interviewed. Investigators hoped to uncover any clues that might lead them to Charles or provide insight into his state of mind at the time of the murders. They spoke to former classmates, colleagues and neighbors, piecing together a picture of a man who was both brilliant and enigmatic. What they discovered painted a complex picture of a young man who was both brilliant and deeply troubled. Charles had always been a bit of a loner, preferring to keep to himself and avoid social interactions. Despite his intelligence and academic success, he struggled with personal relationships and often seemed distant and detached. Charles had a history of mental health issues, including paranoia and delusions. He had been diagnosed with several mental health conditions over the years, and his behavior had become increasingly erratic in the months leading up to the murders. Friends and family members recalled instances where Charles had exhibited signs of paranoia, convinced that he was being watched and followed. Some reports suggested he had exhibited violent tendencies in the past, though nothing to the extreme of the crimes of which he was now suspected. There were accounts of Charles having outbursts of anger and aggression, but these incidents were relatively minor compared to the brutal nature of his parents' murders. This raised questions about whether Charles was capable of such a heinous act, or if there was more to the story. Adding to the intrigue, investigators uncovered evidence suggesting that Charles had been deeply interested in government conspiracies and clandestine operations. He had spent countless hours researching and writing about various conspiracy theories, convinced that he was uncovering hidden truths that others were too blind to see. This obsession with secrecy and intrigue only added to the mystery surrounding his disappearance. He had reportedly told friends and family about his belief that he was being followed, and that his phone was tapped. Charles was convinced that he was the target of a vast and shadowy conspiracy, and he often spoke of being under constant surveillance. These claims were dismissed by many as the delusions of a troubled mind, but they added a layer of complexity to the investigation. He claimed to be working on top-secret projects for the government, though these claims were dismissed by those who knew him as the ramblings of a troubled mind. Charles's assertions about his involvement in secret government work were met with skepticism, as there was no evidence to support his claims. However, his insistence on these stories raised questions about his mental state and whether his delusions had played a role in the events leading up to the murders. Despite their best efforts, authorities were unable to locate Charles. The search for him spanned years, with investigators following up on countless leads and tips, but each one led to a dead end. Charles seemed to have vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and unresolved mysteries. The trail ran cold, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. The case eventually went cold, with no new leads or evidence to pursue. The mystery of Charles Rogers' whereabouts and his potential involvement in the murders remained unsolved, a haunting enigma that continued to perplex those who had worked on the case. Was Charles responsible for the brutal murders of his parents, driven to the brink by his deteriorating mental state? The question of Charles's guilt or innocence loomed large, with some believing that his mental health issues had pushed him to commit the unthinkable, while others argued that he was a victim of circumstance, caught up in a web of conspiracy and intrigue. Or was he an innocent man on the run, wrongly accused of a crime he didn't commit? The possibility that Charles was innocent and had fled out of fear for his own safety added another layer of complexity to the case. If he was indeed innocent, then the true perpetrator of the murders remained at large and justice had yet to be served. The mystery of Charles Rogers' whereabouts and his potential role in the Icebox murders continues to baffle investigators and fuel speculation to this day. The case remains one of the most intriguing and perplexing unsolved mysteries in the annals of criminal history, a story that continues to captivate the imagination and elude definitive answers.